What happens when you pair grit and determination with endless regression? Well, you probably end up with someone like So Eun-hyun. But before he became strong enough to stand toe-to-toe with a cultivator, Yoon-hyun was a regular office worker. Chapter 1 kicks off with an older Yoon-hyun on his deathbed. A young girl entered his house with a bowl of steamed potatoes, which were from her mother, and she set the bowl beside Eun-hyun. She left quickly, asking him to get well soon so he can continue making soap for them. You see, Eun-hyun isn't originally from this world. He and 6 other colleagues were on their way to the company workshop when they got swept up in a landslide. Before they could make sense of what was happening, they were confronted by a giant wolf with 3 tails, a 2-headed red snake, and the strangest of them all were mysterious men who could fly. The sage-like beings were in awe of his colleagues' talents and took each one of them into the sky. Leaving behind him and Director Kim, as they struggled to adapt to this new world, they held out hope that something special would happen to them as well. 6 months later, Director Kim was fed up with living like this, and he spent all of his money to buy third-rate martial arts books. Within 3 months, he mastered it and became a full-fledged martial artist. He continued to climb the ranks, and, after becoming a powerful warrior, he left for Janghu, leaving Yoon-hyun behind as well. He held out hope that maybe he could find his calling, but after 50 years, nothing special had happened to him. He is just an old man dying from a cold. He did his best to create a good life for himself. He learned the language, and he was able to make some money by making and selling soap. But that quickly ended when thieves stole his recipe. Now he is alone in his shack. In his final moments, he cried about his colleagues leaving him behind. Then he suddenly opened his eyes to the moment when he and his colleagues first arrived in this strange world. As he was gathering his bearings, Jeon Myung-chul approached and punched him. He blamed Eun-hyun for getting them swept up in the landslide and promised to fire him when they made it back to the office. The others tried to calm Jeon down, and as he stood from the ground, Eun-hyun realized that he spent his first life apologizing. But in this life, if he can handle the person, then he will never duck a fade. He mercilessly beat Jeon, leaving the others speechless. Jeon started apologizing profusely, and Eun-hyun smiled, happy about the fact that he has the ability to change his fate. Chapter 2 starts with Director Kim asking Eun-hyun how he could do something like this. Eun-hyun didn't care about the opinion of the others, since they will soon be taken away, but Director Kim will become one of the strongest martial artists, so he wanted to get on his good side. He bowed his head and apologized, saying he let his anger take control. He helped Jeon up, apologizing for ruining his face. With the scuffle handle, Director Kim, being the oldest, assumed the leadership role and says they need to go looking for civilization, which is the logical thing to do, but Eun-hyun knows this world doesn't function by the same logic as their previous world. In this world, there are people who can be considered natural disasters. The forest they are in is called the Ascension Path, and there is no village or city nearby. Eun-hyun suggests that they set up shelter somewhere safe, but Kim wanted to look for the car since it had all of their supplies. Eun-hyun knew that they wouldn't be able to find the car. However, the others wouldn't believe him if he said they were in a different world. He suggested they split into 2 teams to look for the car and to find somewhere safe. Sometime later, in a cave, the group gathered around a fire discussing what could have happened to the car. They all thanked Eun-hyun for finding the cave and making something delicious for them to eat. Eun-hyun accepted their thanks, deciding to enjoy the moment, because tonight will be the last time they can laugh like this. In the next instant, the scene shifts to Eun-hyun breathing frantically, and in front of him stood a giant wolf with 3 tails. The wolf says he was drawn in by Eun-hyun's unique smell. All the commotion caused the others to step out of the cave, and immediately after seeing the monster, they started to panic. Eun-hyun shouted for all of them to get on their knees, which pleased the wolf. Usually, he would have ripped off their limbs, but since one of them seems to be well-mannered, he only asked for one of them to offer their arm for staying in his forest. In his previous life, Eun-hyun and his colleagues all panicked, and the wolf took off with all of their right arms and legs. He knows that even if he loses his arm, the cultivators who will appear in 2 days will heal him. On top of that, he made sure to prepare an herb that'll reduce the pain. Eun-hyun offered up his left arm, the wolf ripped off his arm, and Eun-hyun reached for the herb. He ate the herb quickly, and the wolf commented that he thought Eun-hyun would taste different since he smelled so different, but he tasted worse than the other humans. Feeling better thanks to the herb, Yoon-hyun apologized to the wolf if his offering wasn't good enough. The wolf allowed them to stay in his territory for 7 days and promised that they wouldn't die. Afterwards, he leaped into the air and flew away. The others all approached Eun-hyun and brought him inside the cave. Inside the cave, Eun-hyun explained the situation to them and says they will be safe for a week. Kim asks what will happen after the week is up, and Yoon-hyun explains that they will need to offer something else to the wolf as a sacrifice. After explaining, Yoon-hyun passed out due to exhaustion. He woke up later and overheard the others discussing whether or not they should sacrifice him to the wolf. Eun-hyun stood in the shadows. Chapter 3 begins with Eun-hyun picking up a rock, contemplating killing Jong, who suggested to the others that they offer him as a sacrifice. He walked away, deciding that if he acts cruelly now, it will cause issues with his relationship with Director Kim. Plus, from how the conversation was going, his colleagues seemed to be good people. The next day, the two-headed snake came demanding blood. Chief Lee offered his blood. Afterwards, the snake slithered away, spitting out the blood because of how bad it tasted. Shortly after Eun-hyun asked Joan to help him, he offered to show him the edible herbs. As they gathered the herbs, Eun-hyun used this moment to do to Joan everything that was done to him when he first entered the company. As they continued gathering herbs, they stumbled onto a field of ginseng. These ginseng were way bigger than the average, and although it won't be of much use to cultivators, it is an extremely precious medicine for martial artists. The two harvested a few ginseng, and Yoon-hyun noticed a dark cloud forming near the cave, so they decided to head back. Later, a clash of 3 energies brought the group to their knees. 3 individuals, one wearing a golden gown, another wearing a black robe, and the third wearing blue armor, observed from the sky. They were intrigued by the talent of some of Yoon-hyun's co-workers. However, only 3 of them possessed spiritual roots. The one wearing a golden gown shocked Jun with lightning, and the other played a tune that almost ruptured Yoon-hyun's female colleague, Kang's eardrums. The final cultivator checked Chief Lee to see if he had the unique holy body. He decided to take Chief Lee as a disciple of the Azure Heaven Creation sect. Chief Lee couldn't respond under the pressure that the 3 cultivators were emitting. The 3 cultivators offered the 3 wealth and fame. Then they grabbed the 3 of them and healed Eun-hyun's arm. Afterwards, they flew into the sky. As Director Kim called out for the cultivators to come back, Yoon-hyun felt relieved that the cultivators healed his arm. The next day, they were caught in a rainstorm and Deputy Manager Bang had fallen ill. Director Kim asks Eun-hyun if he knows of any herb they can use to cure her. Eun-hyun suggests they wait because someone might appear. Suddenly, a figure entered the cave, monologuing to himself, "Mortals in the ascension path, like ants suffering among the competition between dragons." Director Kim asks who he was, and this person introduced himself as the Sea Dragon King, Eun-hyun Hwel. Chapter 4 starts with Eun-hyun Hwel explaining that he came to the cave looking for the source of the storm. The cause of the storm seems to be Deputy Manager Bang, which Hwel found interesting. Eun-hyun explained their situation to Hwel, and he burst out laughing. He asked Eun-hyun if he knows where they are. He explained that this place is known as the Ascension Path, a gateway that leads to the upper realm, and in just a few months, a dimensional rift called Ascension Gate will open. This phenomenon happens once every 1,000 years, and countless high-level cultivators and spiritual beings gather to ascend to the upper realm. Director Kim asked how the cultivators will be able to take their colleagues to the upper realm. Hwel showed them a vase and explained that cultivators have a technique that shrinks large objects and is how they are able to bring their entire sex with them to the upper realm. Hwel's curiosity about Bang was growing. He leaned over and touched her head. Director Kim tried to stop him, but the pressure released by Hwel dropped him and the others to their knees. Hwel picked Bang up, saying he will give her his blood and accept her as his kin. On his way out of the cave, he told Eun-hyun and the others not to casually ask high-level cultivators questions. He answered because he is generous, but other cultivators would have killed them. The next day, Eun-hyun and the others waited outside the cave, discussing their options. Suddenly, Deputy Manager Oh released a shockwave. The shockwave brought a cultivator riding a mechanical, bull-like creature. The cultivator quickly deduced how mortals were able to enter the ascension path. He stepped down from his machine and asked, "Who emitted that shockwave just now?" He realized it was Deputy Manager Oh, and he started approaching her. Director Kim stepped in front of him but was tossed aside with ease. Eun-hyun saved Director Kim, injuring his back in the process. The cultivator offered to take Deputy Manager Oh in, but he sees that she still has some attachments to Eun-hyun and Director Kim. He picked them with something that I can only describe as the Force. Deputy Manager Oh begged the cultivator to spare the others, and she agreed to go under the cultivator's wing. The cultivator dropped them, then he opened a portal, saying that if they remain in the ascension path, then Deputy Manager Oh will remain attached, so he plans to send them to a nearby nation. A short while later, Eun-hyun was woken up by some chatter. From the alleyway, he looked onto the busy street, not being able to recognize where he was. This wasn't the place he and Director Kim ended up in his previous regression, but after looking around, he recognized a tall building and concluded that he was in the capital of Yangguo, Sokyung City. Chapter 5 begins with the two feeling overwhelmed with everything that has happened to them. Although this was his second life, Eun-hyun didn't know what to do because in his first regression, he was just a powerless herb gatherer. The two stepped into the busy streets, and Director Kim tried to decipher the language. It sounded like they were speaking Chinese, and they were whispering while looking at him and Eun-hyun. Eun-hyun says the people are saying their clothes are weird. He told Kim that he can speak a bit of Chinese, which was a lie. In the past, he endured the mockery of beggars for 2 months to learn the basics of the language. The two went to the medicine hall to trade in ginseng for money. The physician offered 15 silver for 1 ginseng, which was more money than Eun-hyun ever had in his previous life. Afterwards, Eun-hyun purchased some new clothes and a small house for him and Kim to live in. Later that night, Eun-hyun showed Kim the rest of the ginseng, saying they won't have a source of income once they run out of herbs, and that they needed to figure out a way to bring in more money. Kim suggested they start a business with the money from the rest of the ginseng. Eun-hyun was confident in Kim's ability to run a business, but since he regressed, he wanted to dream bigger. In his previous life, Kim became a martial master in a few months with third-rate martial arts books. He would have been even more powerful if he had learned more advanced techniques. Eun-hyun decided to push forward the birth of the greatest swordsman in the Jianghu. Eun-hyun persuaded Kim that for them to set up a business, they need to learn a bit of self-defense. Kim's eyes light up. In the city they are currently in, there are 7 famous sects. Among them, demon slaying, self-binding temple, suppressing birdhouse, and 7 mysteries sect are on the orthodox side, and Wolf Fang Gang, the Dark Knight Association, and Dragon Fighting Stronghold are part of the unorthodox side. He told Kim what each sect specializes in and asked which one he liked best. Kim was drawn to the demon slaying sect as, in his eyes, a martial artist should wield a sword. 3 months later, they showed up in front of the demon slayer sect and offered money to let them join. They were brought to the sect leader, and Eun-hyun showed him a box filled with silver. The sect leader accepted their donation, but says only one of them can be accepted. Kim tried to argue, but Eun-hyun graciously accepted. Chapter 6 begins with a narration that to master a martial art means to understand the martial art's true meaning. A third-rate warrior who understands the meaning of martial arts can become a second-rate warrior by merging their own understanding into the martial art. In order to advance from there, you need more than double the understanding compared to before. But that only applies if someone isn't a genius. Despite being an outsider, Kim was able to defeat all of the direct disciples of the demon-slaying sect and became a first-rate warrior. The sect leader, realizing that this will bring dishonor to his sect, orders his disciples to capture Kim. Kim and Eun-hyun were held up in a room. Eun-hyun didn't know why he was arrested alongside Kim when he didn't know any martial arts. He asked Kim, who was engrossed in training, if he wasn't worried. He explained that if they are found guilty, they will destroy his chi core. Kim says he isn't worried because he is close to advancing to the next stage. Martial peak is the next stage after first rate, that is, the level of most sect leaders. There are no mentions of the stage after that, so essentially, Kim was about to max out his character. This made Eun-hyun glad. 7 days later, while meditating, the flower of chi appeared over Kim's head while he meditated. Shortly after, members of the demon-slaying stormed in, accusing Kim and Eunhyun of being spies, and relayed an order for their cores to be destroyed. Kim easily defeated them and sent the others running. Kim tells Eunhyun that he will continue to train his martial arts, and Eunhyun says he will accompany him. He listed some sects they could visit, and Kim tells him to head there first while he takes care of the demon-slaying sect. Funnily enough, Kim arrived at the location before Eunhyun. After being betrayed by the demon-slaying sect, Kim took over the dragon-fighting stronghold. 2 years later, he toured each region of Yangwo, and in year 3, he destroyed the emblems of every sect. Kim became known as the greatest martial artist under the sun, and he formed the Martial Alliance. 7 years later, Eunhyun and Kim were as close as brothers, and Kim created the Severing Mountain Sword for Eunhyun. Eunhyun graciously accepted, but Eunhyun had no talent in martial arts. Even though the greatest martial artist under the sun was teaching him, he barely made it to third rate after an entire year. Since he didn't have talent, Eunhyun decided to focus on medicine. After a decade, Eunhyun witnessed Kim reaching the 5 energies converged to the origin. Skeletal Restructuring. Chapter 7. Director Kim looked younger and was filled with energy. And moving forward, he wanted to focus on finding a successor to hand the Martial Alliance over to. But so far, nobody fits the bill. 15 years later marks 35 years since Eunhyun started his life on the ascension path. He is currently in his mid-60s, and after a single year since his skeletal restructuring, Kim passed the position of alliance leader to his successor and left. Eunhyun wanted to retire with him, but to maintain order in the alliance, Eunhyun needed to stay as the strategist. Later that day, while on a walk, a person stumbled out of the bushes. It was a heavily injured Kim. Eunhyun asked what happened to him, and as he lay there, Kim says he was blessed with a gift for martial arts. Among ordinary mortals, no one can match his martial talent. Eunhyun says everyone knows that Kim is the strongest man under the heavens. Kim interrupted, saying he fought a cultivator. They don't reveal themselves easily, but they lurk within the shadows. As the alliance's influence grew, cultivators have begun to directly influence them. Kim had a problem with that, but going against them would mean going against a nation. That's the reason Kim gave up the position of alliance leader. Kim explains that the cultivators were difficult to find, and when he found one, they wouldn't fight him because he is immortal. But 5 years ago, he was able to find a cultivator who was willing to duel with him. Eunhyun asked if he won, and Kim says he did. Excited, Eunhyun says that it's great that he wasn't the alliance leader because winning against a cultivator would have caused a lot of trouble for the alliance. In a serious tone, Kim says he put his life on the line against a cultivator in the chi building stage, and all he did was make a small cut on his fingertips. The cultivator said that even a single scratch counted as his loss. Eunhyun says that the cultivator must have been one of the strongest, but Kim says the chi building is one of the lowest stages. Eunhyun knew cultivators were ridiculously strong, but Kim is the strongest martial artist in the world, and such a warrior barely nipped the finger of a bottom-rate cultivator. Kim realized that he was a frog in a well, but today he managed to cut off the cultivator's hand. However, the cultivator healed it quickly with a talisman. Kim had reached the limit of his martial arts, and he was here to say goodbye. The cultivator agreed to take him in because of his willpower. Eunhyun thought it was impossible for regular people to join cultivators without a spiritual root. Kim explains that the 5 energies converging to the origin can act as a substitute. Using his sword, he cut open a small dimension pocket and gave Eunhyun a book as his last gift. Time passed, and like some cruel joke, Eunhyun ended in the same position, dying from a cold. Although he lived a better life, he still had many regrets. This marked the end of his second life. Chapter 8 starts with Eunhyun's third life. He opened his eyes in the middle of the same forest. However, unlike before, he was full of energy. Suddenly, manager Jung Myung-chul charged at Eunhyun, blaming him for the accident. But with the little martial arts experience from his past life, Eunhyun was easily able to weave manager Jung Myung-chul's attacks. Eunhyun started thinking that maybe his ability to regress isn't a blessing but a curse. If he were to continue regressing, then he would be trapped in fate's wheel. He cleared things up with his colleagues, explaining that if he hadn't been tired from doing Jung Myung-chul's work, then he wouldn't have been too tired to drive. Eunhyun started to question if there was a point in making bonds with people and feared his infinite regression. He wanted the curse removed and thought back to the cultivator who took Deputy Manager O. They came because of the ascension path, so that must be his way out of this place. But first, he needs to become a cultivator to expand his lifespan and go through the ascension gate. Right away, Eunhyun started his quest to become a cultivator. Eunhyun first began working on his chi, using the Dragon Vein chi method that Director Kim made for him in the second life. But first and foremost, he needed to break through his blocked chi passageways that were full of fast food preservatives and clogged by stress. Eunhyun then sharpened a stick and began revising his martial arts skills. Since he hadn't practiced at the end of his life, his skills reduced, but with a little mind refresher, he was able to use the Severing Mountain sword attack, cutting through a tree with only a stick. Being curious and shocked at the display of strength, Director Kim asked how he was able to do that. Being aware that Director Kim will be the one to instruct him on how to become a cultivator, Eunhyun wanted to speed up Director Kim's growth even further, and he started teaching Director Kim some martial arts. Just then, the three-tailed wolf crushed a tree with its giant claws. The wolf was disgusted at the sight of humans in his forest. Chapter 9, Eunhyun walked up to the three-tailed wolf to offer up his arm. Dwelling in his weakness, he saw the need for strength. Eunhyun spent his third life traveling throughout Yangwo and training in martial arts, and ended up barely reaching first rate. In his fourth life, third regression, Eunhyun walked up to the wolf and ripped off his arm himself, and offered it to the wolf. As he did this, he vowed never to give up. After eating his arm, the wolf left, and without regard for his colleagues, he swung his sword, only stopping when the cultivators arrived so he could heal his arm. He stopped on the fourth day to ask Hwale what use he has for a mortal without a spiritual root who can only live for about 100 years. Hwale says once Deputy Manager Bang accepts his blood, she will awaken a spiritual root. Hearing this, Eunhyun asks if Hwale would give them some of his blood. Hwale warned him to avoid making demands to high-ranked cultivators and left. The next day, Eunhyun asks the same question to the cultivator who took Deputy Manager O. The cultivator showed him a pill, explaining that she will awaken after consuming the pill. Afterwards, they were sent through the portal again, but this time they ended up in a forest near the southwest of Yangwo. Thanks to his previous life, he knows this place like the back of his hand. He woke Director Kim up, and as they made their way to the nearest city, Eunhyun explained the situation to him. He bought a house, taught Director Kim the language as well as the Serving Mountain blade. Within 3 months, Director Kim reached the 3-flower level. Seeing Director Kim's growth, Eunhyun decided that it would be best if he and Director Kim went their separate ways. Director Kim was against it, but Eunhyun knew that he would continue living the same life if he didn't take risks. He says they should tour and develop their skills. They promised to meet on this day in this house every 2 years. Afterwards, Eunhyun left and went straight to the Hall of 8 Respects. Eunhyun requested a duel with the sect leader and showed off a bit of his strength. Chapter 10 begins with Eunhyun being brought to the training hall by a beautiful woman. When they arrived, the sect leader and Eunhyun showed their respect and glazed each other a little bit. The duel began, and the sect leader made the first move. However, Eunhyun deflected it, and they continued to size each other up. Some more glazing ensued, and Eunhyun made the second move. The two exchanged blows, with the sect leader being pushed back. Eunhyun decided to end things. He leaped into the air and used the 12th form 7 Lights Emerging Peak, cutting through the sect leader's weapon. The sect leader admitted defeat, and Eunhyun bowed his head to show respect and left through the front door. Eunhyun continued on, hoping to reach the martial peak in this life. He toured 4 more medium-sized sects in Seokyeong City. Among them, he lost to the Unri sect and the Hwayung sect, but was victorious against the Gaiju sect and the Yugwol sect. His next target was the Hojang sect. He easily defeated the Hojang sect's strongest warrior, but before he could leave, the sect leader ordered him to face off against the 10 elders of the sect. Eunhyun tried to talk his way out of it, but the sect leader wasn't having it. Eunhyun made a note that the unorthodox sect was even crazier than he thought. Chapter 11 begins with Eunhyun smiling. He decided to face off against the unorthodox sect for this reason, and he accepted the sect leader's ridiculous duel request and started gaining real battle experience. The scene shifts to a restaurant, and the townsfolk are discussing Eunhyun. They thought it would be impossible for Eunhyun to walk out of the Hojang sect alive, But just then, Eunhyun walked in with his clothes all bloody and ordered one bowl of noodles. As he waited for his noodles, he reflected on the battle. He fought 10 against 1, and the Hojang sect was using poison. Thankfully, he was able to cure himself with his knowledge of medicine from his second life. Even after defeating the 10 elders, the sect leader ordered every member of the sect to pick up a weapon and attack. Eunhyun fought like an animal for hours, and he was victorious. He cut the tendons of the survivors to cripple them for life so they wouldn't come after him for revenge. After finishing his noodles, Eunhyun found it hard to relax because of the stimulants he took. He grabbed his sword and left to challenge an orthodox sect. Eunhyun's ridiculous feat caused his name to be spread among the masses. Soon, people gave him the title Infinite Fighting Spirit, so Eunhyun. Eunhyun continued to fight because he lacked talent. For a talentless man like himself to break through a wall, he must embrace insanity. That is the only way he can catch up to a genius. And so he went through various sects in Yangguo and fought several duels a day. 5 years later, in a duel, Eunhyun formed Sword Chi. It placed a ridiculous burden on his head, but is the only way of keeping up with a genius. His opponent lunged at him, and Eunhyun attempted to block, but he was defeated. His opponent says he had high hopes because of all the rumors, but he won again this time. With his incredible talent, Director Kim became the strongest man under the heavens, and reached skeletal restructuring in just 5 years. Eunhyun, on the other hand, was still first-rate. He realized that his limiting factor was talent. After the duel, Eunhyun asked what brought Director Kim here. Director Kim says he realized that he has become the strongest man in all of Yangguo. And as the strongest man under the heavens, he wanted to create a sect, and he offered Eunhyun a seat. Eunhyun refused because if he accepted, he would work himself to death as the vice leader or strategist again. To get to the next level, he can't waste a single second. After explaining that it will be hard for him to meet after creating a sect, Director Kim tried to persuade Eunhyun, saying he will give him one-on-one lessons. But still, Eunhyun refused as he needed real-life experience more than anything. He grabbed his belongings, deciding to watch Director Kim's saga from afar and continue on his own endless journey for battle. And so, another 20 years passed, and in the same location, Director Kim met with Eunhyun, who had come to the realization that his talent is truly forsaken by the heavens. Chapter 12 begins with Director Kim questioning why Eunhyun hasn't been able to advance to the next stage. Eunhyun was confused. His understanding of sword energy far exceeded that of other first-rate, but he can't last more than 3 exchanges against a peak-level martial artist. Director Kim found it strange. From what he could observe, Eunhyun has nearly become one with his sword, but he has yet to reach the martial peak. Eunhyun's nose started to bleed from the strain of using sword energy. He can maintain sword energy for half a day, and he hoped that something would change once he can maintain it for a full day. Kim wished him luck and handed him a book containing insight he gained from fighting a core formation stage cultivator. He says he managed to escape. Eunhyun questioned why Kim handed him a book on how to escape, and Kim says cultivators are living natural disasters. Eunhyun promised to preserve the book and pass it down to the next generation. Afterwards, Kim left to find another cultivator. Right before he left, he hinted to Eunhyun that to reach the martial peak, he should take every single piece of information in his mind at all times. Eunhyun couldn't believe what he was hearing. Just maintaining sword energy was already putting a lot of strain on his head, and if he tried to be aware of his surroundings at all times, he was certain his head would explode. However, there must have been a reason why the strongest man under the heaven gave him that advice, and from that day, he started to pay close attention to his surroundings. 5 years later, Eunhyun still wasn't used to the strain. That sword energy and being aware of that enters his sight was putting on his brain. Furthermore, he surpassed visual information and is now tracking audible information as well. In his current state, there is no way he could fight someone, and even if he wanted to, there aren't any sects left to fight. In the past 30 years, he's traveled through all of Yangguo, and now there isn't a sect left in Yangguo for him to challenge. He started resorting to capturing bandits and living off the bounties. But going forward, he wasn't sure if fighting against enemies who are willing to use dirty tricks while in his lightheaded state would be the smartest thing to do. But he chose this path, and even if he dies, he will continue to walk this path. 15 years later, he met with Kim. It has been 45 years since he regressed, and he has become proficient at being aware of his 5 senses. But he still hasn't been able to become a peak-level martial artist. On the other hand, Kim had a bounty on his head and barely escaped a trap set by 2 cultivators at the core formation stage. He managed to leave a scratch on one of their cheeks as well. Yoonhyun is glad that Kim gained insight again. However, Kim has realized that it's impossible to defeat a core formation stage cultivator. And recently, he came to the conclusion that 5 energies converging to the origin may be the limit for a martial artist. Eunhyun saw himself in Kim, although they walked 2 different paths. Both Eunhyun and Kim were stumped as to why Eunhyun was still a first rate. Kim suggested a duel, which Eunhyun lost. The duel confused Kim even more. Based on his skills and experience, Eunhyun should have reached the peak ages ago. After thinking about it, he says maybe Eunhyun is lacking a catalyst, a strong sense of drive or emotion. Eunhyun shouted in despair, "That's bullshit. I have brought my sword with me everywhere I went for 50 years. I don't know what more I can do." He rolled on the ground, throwing a tantrum. Tears streamed down his face, and Kim slashed a tree. Afterwards, he explained that the writing on the tree is the teachings of a martial arts that should fill out Eunhyun's weak points. Afterwards, he disappeared. 5 years later, Eunhyun was nearing his end. He hadn't seen Kim in a while, either. As he reminisced about his friend, Kim appeared behind him. Kim was missing both of his arms. Eunhyun tried to rush him inside the house to treat him, but Kim picked him up with the force. He drew Eunhyun's attention to the cultivator chasing them, saying he blew up the arm of a core formation stage cultivator, and he has finally witnessed the stage past the 5 energies converging to the origin. Chapter 13 begins with Kim showing Eunhyun what he risked his life for. Eunhyun recognized that the technique has roots in enhanced chi. Kim was able to burst a core formation cultivator's arm thanks to this technique, and he fired it at the house. The house was completely destroyed, and for a moment, Eunhyun spaced out and rage filled him. But after calming himself, he watched Kim's martial performance. A 3-story house was completely destroyed in a single attack, and in the wreckage, Eunhyun noticed traces of blade marks. From this, he concluded that the attack just now was a concentration of thousands of blade energies. This singular attack was stronger than anything he had witnessed. Kim smiled. He felt proud of the fact that he no longer had to ambush a cultivator to have a chance at winning. He ran out of energy, and the 2 plummeted to the ground. In his final moments, Kim asked Eunhyun not to forget his techniques and to pass them down to the next generation. Eunhyun tried his best to help Kim when a voice from the tree calls out, "I finally found you, ultimate martial spirit." He announced that Kim is a wanted criminal and commanded Eunhyun to leave. Eunhyun carried Kim on his back, and he tried to make his escape. The cultivator smiled and summoned an army of undead to chase after Eunhyun. As he ran, Eunhyun found the similarities between his and Kim's nicknames to be interesting. He continued to run, while fending off the undead, and complaining that Kim is the one who should be carrying him on his back. The cultivator did not give up. Morning came and went until Eunhyun ran himself to the edge of a cliff. The cultivator was impressed that Eunhyun was able to run for 3 days straight, but in the end, his efforts was for nothing as Kim was already dead. Eunhyun reveals that he has known for a long time. Confused, the cultivator asked why he continued to run. Eunhyun started chuckling, and he unsheathed his sword. He was able to make it to this point despite lacking talent thanks to Kim's teachings. He shouts, "If you want to take my master's head, you will have to take mine as well." The cultivator felt disrespected. He ripped off the arms from 2 undead and attached them to Kim's body. He turned Kim into an undead and ordered him to attack Eunhyun. Chapter 14 begins with Kim lunging at Eunhyun. Eunhyun asked how a cultivator could do something like this, and the cultivator just looked on with a smile. Kim launched a barrage of attacks. Luckily, he wasn't able to use his martial arts, so Eunhyun was able to dodge. However, his old body was quickly being overwhelmed by Kim's sheer force and speed. He already felt bad about pointing his blade at Kim. He apologized and made up his mind to end things swiftly. He used the Severing Mountain Sword 21st form Heavenly Lake. In the moment, he recalled asking Kim why he thinks someone would name a technique after a lake. Kim created the technique for him in one of his previous lives, so he was hoping this Kim would have an answer. Kim says the name reminds him of a lake from their previous world, or maybe the person who created the technique was like them. The heavenly lake holds the view of the skies within its surface, but it remains unchanged. The sky and the technique symbolize the martial artist he is dueling against. And the lake, which encompasses the sky's view, refers to a single strike. He deflected Kim's attack, hitting his sword away. The technique he just used absorbs the energy flowing in his opponent's veins and pours it into his sword for a single moment. It is a move only he can use because he is a physician and a first-rate martial artist. If things continue like this, then the cultivator will continue to use Kim's body long after he is gone, so he combines all of the severing mountain sword forms into a single attack. He plans to destroy Kim's body. Eunhyun used all the forms, and the cultivator, realizing what he was trying to do, poured more power into Kim's body. Kim's body inflated like queso, and he prepared for an attack. Eunhyun was planning to dodge the attack, but his life was about to end soon anyway, so he stepped forward to ensure that his master would no longer be defiled. He poured everything he had into this attack. As he pushed through, his head felt like it was about to explode, and he was willing to let it explode. He was willing to squeeze out every single ounce until his brain burned to a crisp. Suddenly, instead of exploding, it felt like his brain accepted something. He felt like he had become delusional, and red and blue lines appeared in his line of sight. The red line showed him Kim's attack path, and he dodged it with ease. The blue line showed him the most optimal path to attack, and he slashed Kim's neck. Eunhyun quickly realized that this is the vision of a martial artist who has reached the peak, and Kim was smiling at him. Talent blessed by the heavens and talent forsaken by the heavens. Polar opposites, but similar in a way. They are both trying to escape the fate given to them by the heavens. Eunhyun slashed Kim's body, and in that moment, there were no geniuses. It was just one dead man and another on death's door. Kim's spirit encouraged Eunhyun to keep going, and Eunhyun used the fifth form of the technique, ending the fight. The cultivator was furious, and Eunhyun fell off the cliff, feeling at peace. And so Eunhyun attained the level of martial arts he had desired for so long. This marked his fourth life, third regression. Chapter 15 begins with his fourth regression. He had regressed to the same point, and as he rejoiced about his accomplishments, Jeon Myung-chul lunged at him, blaming him for their situation. Eunhyun could see the red lines, and he dodged Jeon's attack with his eyes closed. He was able to dodge Jeon's attacks with his eyes closed before, but that was him making predictions thanks to his martial arts experience. This was different. He wasn't trying to predict Jeon's attacks. He could just feel where the attack was coming from. This is why, no matter how many first-rate martial artists attack a peak-level martial artist, they will never win. This time, he can also see the best possible trajectories to attack. He is way stronger than Jeon, so there were many openings. Blood suddenly dripped down his nose, and he got a terrible headache. He dodged Jeon's attack and knocked him out. The other sprinted over, and after calming down his colleagues, Eunhyun brought them to the cave and lit a fire, and he let them drift off to sleep after cooking some herbs. Later that night, he couldn't help but swing a dull branch around. He could split a leaf in half without using chi. The vision of a peak martial artist allows him to see the best possible path for attacking and defending, and his brain processes it as red and blue lines. Using this vision, he can read all of his opponent's moves and make the most optimal movement while aiming for the opponent's weaknesses. He now knows why Kim, in the past, forced him to enhance his 5 senses. After further testing, he reached the conclusion that the vision of martial peak is truly incredible. Eunhyun closed his eyes, imagining that the falling leaves were all enemies. He sliced through the leaves till dawn. However, his brain felt like it was about to be burnt to a crisp. He found 8 yellow bamboo roots nearby and performed the dragon vein chi method, and he is now able to maintain the vision for 3 hours. Now that he has reached this level, he doesn't need to collect yellow bamboo roots anymore. He can resolve their financial issues with his own abilities. As for the leftovers, he brought them back to the cave. In his head are 6 volumes worth of Kim's findings, and if he passes that on, this life's Kim will surpass the previous life's Kim, and now that he has reached his martial peak, the teaching he will be able to get from Kim will exceed that of his previous lives. He still has no idea how to reach the next stage, but unlike his colleagues, there's only one option for an idiot like him. He walked towards the exit of the cave, determined to train endlessly. His first goal for this life is to resolve the burning pain he gets when using the vision, and then finally attain the level of the 3 flowers gathering at the summit. He was determined to reach what is known to be the pinnacle of Marshall Peak.